Maybe the cleaning lady got lost, another executive joked, triggering another wave of barely contained laughter. Sarah took a deep breath, raised her bow, and in rapid succession, released 10 arrows. The range fell deathly silent, 10 perfect bullseyes not just centered, but each arrow splitting the one before it. The executives' smug expressions melted into shock as their phones came out, frantically taking pictures and videos. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about underdogs proving everyone wrong, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. 3 months earlier, Sarah Thompson hunched over her kitchen table, staring at the final notice from Brentwood Medical Center. The bill for her father's treatment had climbed to amounts that seemed like fantasy numbers to someone working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. $347,892.16, she whispered to herself, the impossible figure blurring as tears welled in her eyes. She glanced at the small bedroom where her father slept, the once vibrant champion archer now frail and confined to bed rest. Multiple sclerosis had rapidly deteriorated his condition over the past 2 years, stripping away not just his mobility but their financial security along with it. Insurance covered only a fraction of the experimental treatments that showed the only promise of slowing the disease's progression. Sarah's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Ellis Charity Foundation, Annual Archery Tournament. Grand prize, $500,000. She'd been ignoring these notifications for weeks, having given up competitive archery years ago to focus on caring for her father and working extra shifts. The prize money would cover her father's treatments and give them breathing room. But the tournament was exclusive invitation only for professional archers with established reputations and rankings. Sarah hadn't competed since dropping out of college to care for her father when he was first diagnosed. She walked to the garage and unlocked the large storage trunk that had remained untouched for years. Inside lay her father's old compound bow and a collection of arrows. Her fingers traced the worn grip where her father's hands had once guided hers, teaching her the precision and discipline that had once made the Thompsons a respected name in competitive archery circles. "You still have that old thing?" Her father's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on his walker, a rare moment of energy in his increasingly limited days. "I was just remembering," Sarah said, quickly trying to hide the medical bill she'd left on top of the trunk. "Don't think I don't know what you're considering," he said, shuffling closer. "The Ellis tournament. Your mother would have had my head if she knew I let you give up your talent. Dad, that was a lifetime ago. I haven't practiced seriously in years." He lowered himself carefully onto a workbench. "The Thompsons have been archers for 3 generations. Your grandfather taught me, I taught you. And you were always better than both of us. That doesn't matter now. What matters is getting you better. What makes you think those things are separate?" He reached for the bow, his fingers trembling as he held it out to her. "Some talents aren't meant to be buried, Sarah. Sometimes they're given to us for a reason." Sarah took the bow reluctantly. "The registration deadline is tomorrow, and it's invitation only. Then we better make some calls tonight," her father said with the first genuine smile she'd seen in months. The following morning found Sarah in the backyard at dawn, setting up makeshift targets. Her first few attempts were embarrassingly off-mark, the muscle memory buried under years of neglect. By midday, her fingers were blistered and her arms ached, but the arrows were hitting closer to center. Her father watched from the porch, making small adjustments to her stance and offering quiet encouragement. "Breathe through the release, just like I taught you. The bow is an extension of yourself." When her phone rang, it was Ellis Foundation's tournament director, Marcus Ellis himself. "Mr. Thompson has been calling my office every hour on the hour," he said, a mix of annoyance and amusement in his voice. "Says his daughter is the best archer no one's heard of." "My father exaggerates," Sarah replied, heart pounding. "Not according to your collegiate records. 3 regional championships before you disappeared from the circuit. Why'd you stop?" Sarah glanced at her father. "Family priorities. Well, I've got a spot that opened up last minute. One of our competitors tore a rotator cuff yesterday. Your father insisted I offer it to you before going to our wait list. I don't know if I'm ready. Tournaments in 3 months. That's either plenty of time to prepare or just enough rope to hang yourself with. Your choice. After ending the call, Sarah turned to her father, who was beaming. You didn't tell me you were badgering Marcus Ellis. I made some calls to old friends. He shrugged. The archery world has a long memory. That night, Sarah created a training schedule that worked around her jobs. Mornings before her shift at the coffee shop. Evenings after administrative work at the dental office. Weekends dedicated to intensive practice. She converted the garage into a training space, hanging targets and measuring precise distances. Progress was frustratingly slow. Her groupings were inconsistent, her stance shaky after years away from serious competition. Every evening, her father would review recordings of her practice, offering small technical adjustments that made incremental differences. You're thinking too much, he said one night after a particularly frustrating session. You always did. Even as a little girl, you wanted to calculate every variable instead of feeling the shot. That's what made me good, Sarah countered. Precision. It's what made you good, but not great, he corrected. Your mother had the feeling. She could read the wind like it spoke to her. The day you stop fighting your instincts is the day you'll remember what this was always about. 2 months before the tournament, Sarah received a registered letter. Her father's insurance was denying further coverage for his experimental treatments, citing insufficient evidence of efficacy. The costs would now fall entirely on them, an additional $12,000 per month that they simply didn't have. That night, after her father had gone to bed, Sarah broke down. Sitting on the garage floor surrounded by targets and equipment, she wept silently. The pressure was crushing. The tournament was no longer just about possibility. It was their only hope. The next morning, her eyes still puffy from crying, she called in sick to both jobs and drove to Whispering Pines, a secluded natural archery range 2 hours outside the city. It was where her father had first taught her to shoot, where generations of Thompsons had connected with the discipline. The familiar scent of pine and earth centered her as she hiked to the clearing. No measured distances, no circular targets, just natural markers, knots in trees, small gaps between branches, the occasional ribbon tied at challenging angles and distances. For the first time in months, Sarah didn't count her shots or measure her groupings. She simply shot arrow after arrow, losing herself in the rhythm of draw, aim, release. As the sun moved across the sky, something shifted within her. The bow no longer felt like a tool but a part of her body. The targets no longer seemed like challenges but invitations. When she returned home that evening, her father noticed the change immediately. You went to the pines, he said. Not a question. I needed to remember why I loved this in the first place. He nodded, understanding. And did you? I think I'm starting to. The final month of training transformed Sarah. Her confidence grew with each session. Her groupings tightened. Her instincts sharpened. She began incorporating more challenging drills, shooting while kneeling with limited visibility, in gusting winds. Some days she would practice blindfolded, working purely on muscle memory and feel. A week before the tournament, Sarah received another call from Marcus Ellis. Just checking that you're still competing, he said. The field has shaped up to be particularly competitive this year. I'll be there, Sarah confirmed. Good. There's been some buzz about you, Old-timers remembering the Thompson name. A few of our sponsors have asked specifically if you're competing. Sponsors? Sarah asked, surprised. Yes, including some top tech executives who are quite serious about their archery. They're supporting the prize fund this year. Just thought you should know. There will be some important eyes on this competition. The morning of the tournament dawned clear and cool. The Ellis Foundation had spared no expense, transforming the sprawling grounds of the historic lakeside estate into a world-class archery venue. Multiple ranges were set up for different competition categories, with the championship field positioned prominently near the mansion where spectators could watch from a terraced viewing area. Sarah arrived early, her father's bow case slung over her shoulder. His condition had worsened in the final days before the competition, and he had reluctantly agreed to stay home with a home health aide watching the live stream instead of pushing himself to attend in person. "Just remember what we've worked for," Keith said as she left. "Not just the prize. Remember why you shoot." As Sarah checked in at registration, she felt distinctly out of place. The other competitors carried custom cases containing equipment worth thousands. They wore sponsored gear with logos embroidered on performance fabrics. Sarah had her father's 15-year-old compound bow and wore a simple shirt and jeans. She found her assigned preparation area and began her warm-up routine, trying to ignore the curious glances and whispers from nearby competitors. Most were respectful if distant, recognizing her as an unknown factor. A few were openly dismissive, rating her equipment with barely concealed disdain. Thompson, a tall woman with a custom Olympic recurve bow approached. "Any relation to James Thompson from the 2002 World Championships?" "My father," Sarah replied, surprised anyone remembered. "Thought so. He was brilliant. I studied his technique when I was training." She extended her hand. "Miranda Chin, good luck today." The interaction boosted Sarah's confidence as she made her way to the championship field for the qualification round. 60 archers would shoot a standard qualifying round, with the top 16 advancing to the elimination matches. As Sarah took her position, she noticed a group of men and women in the VIP section of the viewing area, dressed in casual luxury attire. They carried themselves with the unmistakable confidence of wealth and influence. They were animatedly discussing the competitors, occasionally using binoculars to assess form and equipment. The sponsors, Sarah realized, tech executives playing at being archery aficionados. The qualification round began with a series of standard distance shots. Sarah settled into her rhythm, focusing entirely on each arrow and blocking out everything else. Her groupings were tight and consistent, placing her solidly in the middle of the pack halfway through the round. During a short break, Sarah overheard two of the tech executives talking as they passed behind the competitors' area. "Who's the woman in lane 7? One asked, gesturing towards Sarah. "Thompson, some legacy entry. Hasn't competed in years," his companion replied. "Using antiquated equipment too. Probably won't make the cut." Sarah gripped her bow tighter, channeling the anger into focus as the second half of qualification began. This portion included more challenging shots, varying distances, smaller targets, time sequences. Here, Sarah's natural instinct and countless hours at Whispering Pines gave her an edge. While others hesitated or overthought, she flowed from shot to shot. When the final scores were tallied, Sarah had finished 12th, comfortably qualifying for the elimination rounds, but still largely overlooked as a serious contender for the championship. The elimination format was brutal and immediate. 16 archers reduced to 8, then 4, then 2 in head-to-head matches. Each competitor would shoot 10 arrows with the highest total score advancing. Sarah's first opponent was a national team member with corporate sponsorships and cutting-edge equipment. As they took their positions, he gave her bow a dismissive glance. "Vintage equipment, huh? Bold choice." Sarah said nothing, focusing instead on her breathing as the signal to begin sounded. The match was close through the first 5 arrows, with both archers placing shots near the center. On the 6th arrow, Sarah's opponent flinched slightly at a gust of wind, sending his shot into the 8 ring. Sarah felt the same wind, but instead of fighting it, she adjusted and released, letting the arrow ride the current directly into the 10 ring. The 2-point advantage was all she needed, maintaining her precision through the final arrows to win the match by 3 points. In the quarterfinals, Sarah faced Miranda Chun, who gave her a respectful nod before they began. The match was a masterclass in technical archery, with both women shooting near-perfect scores. On the final arrow with the match tied, Miranda's shot landed in the 9 ring, just off-center. Sarah took her stance, drew back, and for the briefest moment, thought of her father watching from home. She released, and the arrow struck dead center for a perfect 10, advancing her to the semifinals. The crowd had begun to take notice. The initially sparse spectators around Sarah's matches had grown, with people whispering about the unknown archer with the old equipment who was outperforming champions. The tech executive sponsors had migrated to her section, watching with increasing interest. In the semifinals, Sarah faced the tournament favorite, a former Olympic silver medalist. The pressure was immense, and for the first time that day, Sarah felt her nerves affecting her performance. Her first 2 arrows landed in the 8 ring, putting her at an immediate disadvantage. During a brief pause to reset the targets, Sarah closed her eyes and imagined herself back at Whispering Pines. The sounds of the crowd faded away, replaced by the whisper of wind through pine needles. When she opened her eyes, her focus had returned completely. Her remaining arrows were impeccable, each finding the 10 ring with unerring precision. Her opponent, rattled by the sudden display of perfection, dropped points on his final shots. Sarah advanced to the finals by a single point. As she prepared for the championship match, Sarah noticed that nearly all the spectators had gathered around her field. The tech executives were now directly behind her lane, openly discussing her technique and equipment. Some had their phones out, recording her preparation routine. Her final opponent was a tactical archer sponsored by a leading equipment manufacturer, his bow adorned with stabilizers, dampeners, and precision sights that made Sarah's look primitive by comparison. As they were introduced to the crowd, the announcer emphasized his world rankings and previous titles. For Sarah, there was only a brief mention of her family name and her absence from competition. "Quite the Cinderella story," he said into the microphone. "Thompson returning after years away to face our reigning champion." As they took their positions, Sarah's opponent looked at her with undisguised confidence. "No hard feelings when this is over," he said. "With proper equipment and training, you might have a future in this sport." The format for the finals was different, 10 arrows, but now on a staggered difficulty progression. The targets would move further back with each shot, testing both precision and power. The first 3 arrows were straightforward, with both archers scoring perfect 10s. On the 4th, Sarah's opponent again scored a 10. But something felt off as Sarah took her stance. The wind had shifted subtly, and without hesitation, she adjusted her aim slightly. Her arrow struck perfectly centered in the 10 ring. "Lucky adjustment," one of the tech executives commented loudly enough for Sarah to hear. The targets moved back again for the 5th arrow, now at a distance that tested the limits of standard competition. Sarah's opponent hesitated slightly before releasing, his arrow landing in the 9 ring. Sarah approached her mark, aware that every eye was on her. As she raised her bow, she heard another comment from the executive group. "Is she serious with that yard sale equipment?" one said with a chuckle that sparked several others. "Maybe the cleaning lady got lost," another added more quietly, but still audible in the tense silence. Sarah's cheeks burned as she steadied her trembling hands. The familiar feelings of inadequacy threatened to overwhelm her. The same feelings that had haunted her when bills piled up, when her father's condition worsened, when the future seemed impossibly dark. But instead of faltering, she channeled these emotions. She thought of her father watching, of the treatments he needed, of the generations of Thompsons who had found meaning and purpose in this discipline. She thought of Whispering Pines and the pure joy of the perfect shot. She took a deep breath, raised her bow, and in rapid succession, released her remaining 6 arrows. The range fell deathly silent. 6 perfect bullseyes, each arrow not just centered but splitting the one before it, creating a single point of impact that seemed impossibly precise. Her opponent's jaw dropped. The executive's smug expressions melted into shock as their phones came out, frantically taking pictures and videos of the display. When her opponent completed his final shots, all good but none matching Sarah's supernatural precision, the outcome was academic. Sarah Thompson had won the Ellis Foundation Championship. As Marcus Ellis presented her with the championship trophy and the check for $500,000, camera flashes illuminated the stage. Sarah's hands trembled not from nerves but from the overwhelming realization that her father's treatments were now secured. "An absolutely remarkable performance," Ellis said into the microphone. "I've never seen anything like that final round in 30 years of this competition." As Sarah stepped up to speak, she noticed the group of tech executives standing directly in front of the stage. Their earlier dismissive attitudes were replaced with expressions of awe and calculation. "Thank you for this opportunity," Sarah began. "This victory belongs to my father, who taught me everything I know about archery and life. About persistence when things seem impossible. About finding your center when the world is spinning too fast." Her voice caught. "About remembering why you started something in the first place." After the ceremony, as Sarah was packing her equipment, 3 of the tech executives approached her. "Ms. Thompson," the leader said, extending his hand. "Connor Reeves, CEO of Horizon Technologies. My colleagues and I were incredibly impressed with your performance today." Sarah recognized the name. Horizon was one of the largest tech companies in the world, its founder among the wealthiest people on the planet. "Thank you," she said simply, continuing to pack. "We'd like to discuss a potential sponsorship arrangement," another executive interjected. "Your story has tremendous marketing potential, and your skill is undeniable. With proper equipment, coaching, and financial support, you could dominate this sport," the third added, as if her current equipment and self-coaching were somehow deficient despite her championship. Sarah closed her bow case deliberately before responding. "My father's equipment seems to have worked well enough today." Reeves smiled, recognizing the rebuke. "Sarah Point, how about this? We're hosting an exclusive exhibition next month at my estate. Private range, invitation-only guests, substantial appearance fees for premier archers. We'd like you to be our headliner. I appreciate the offer, but my focus right now is on my family. The fee is $250,000 for a single day," Reeves said bluntly, "plus potential ongoing sponsorship worth significantly more." Sarah paused, thinking of the additional security such money would provide for her father's care. "I'll consider it. You can send the details to the tournament office." As they walked away, Sarah overheard one say to Reeves, "Told you she'd be interested once she heard the number." When Sarah arrived home, her father was waiting, propped up in his wheelchair with the tournament live stream still playing on repeat on his tablet. "You did it," he said, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You really did it." Sarah knelt beside him, placing the trophy in his lap and the check in his hands. "We did it, and this is just the beginning." 2 months later, Sarah stood at the entrance to Connor Reeves' expansive estate, a complex of modern buildings nestled in the mountains outside the city. The private archery range had been constructed specifically for this exhibition, with viewing areas for the 100 or so ultra-wealthy guests who had paid substantial donations to various charities for the privilege of attending. Sarah had spent the intervening weeks balancing her father's improved treatment schedule with preparations for this event. The prize money had immediately gone towards securing the next year of medical care, with the hospital administrators suddenly much more accommodating when payment was guaranteed. She had declined offers of new equipment from various manufacturers, instead working with a local craftsman to restore and optimize her father's bow. "Some things aren't meant to be replaced," she had told him, "just renewed." As she entered the preparation area, Sarah noticed that several other elite archers had been invited, including Miranda Chan and the former champion she had defeated. They greeted her with newfound respect, and Sarah realized that her victory had fundamentally changed how the archery world perceived her. Connor Reeves himself came to welcome the competitors, dressed casually in clothes that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. "So glad you could all join us," he said. "Today is about celebrating excellence and pushing boundaries." He pulled Sarah aside as the others began warming up. "I've arranged something special for your demonstration," he said with barely contained excitement. "Something that will cement your legend status." The exhibition began with each archer demonstrating their specialties: distance shots, precision groupings, speed shooting. The wealthy spectators watched with the detached appreciation of those witnessing skilled performances in a world they understood only superficially. When it came time for Sarah's headline demonstration, Reeves himself made the introduction. "What you're about to witness defies conventional understanding of human precision," he told the audience. "Sarah Thompson emerged from nowhere to become champion because she possesses something beyond technical skill, something that can't be bought or engineered." As Sarah took her position, assistants wheeled out a special target setup. Instead of standard bullseyes, there were 10 crystal champagne flutes arranged in a row, each filled to a different level. These flutes are precisely positioned at increasing distances, Reeves explained to the murmuring crowd. The challenge is to strike each crystal at exactly the waterline, splitting the glass without disturbing the liquid. Sarah stared at the setup, which she hadn't been told about in advance. The shot required was virtually impossible. Splitting glass precisely at the liquid line would require supernatural precision, especially at the further distances. Is there a problem? Reeves asked quietly, noting her hesitation. Sarah thought of her father, who was having a good day and had insisted on attending. He sat in his wheelchair at the edge of the viewing area, watching her with complete confidence. No problem, she replied, unslinging her bow. As she prepared her first arrow, Sarah closed her eyes momentarily, centering herself just as she had done at Whispering Pines. When she opened them, her focus narrowed to the first crystal flute, seeing nothing but the precise point where glass met liquid. Her first arrow flew true, striking the flute exactly at the waterline. The glass split cleanly, the top half falling away while the base remained perfectly intact. Not a drop of liquid spilled. The crowd gasped collectively. Without pausing, Sarah knocked her second arrow and released. Another perfect hit, then another and another. With each successful shot, the audience's reaction intensified from gasps to spontaneous applause to stunned silence as they witnessed something beyond their understanding of human capability. All 10 shots were perfect. 10 crystal flutes split precisely at their waterlines. Not a single drop spilled, at distances that increased with each shot. As she lowered her bow after the final arrow, the silence was absolute before erupting into thunderous applause. Sarah didn't acknowledge it immediately, instead looking to her father, who nodded once with tears in his eyes. Connor Reeves was ecstatic, already calculating the viral potential of the videos his staff were capturing. Absolutely incredible, he gushed, approaching Sarah as the applause continued. I knew you were exceptional. This will change everything. Later, as the event wound down and guests mingled over expensive champagne, Reeves cornered Sarah again. We need to discuss your future, he said. My partners and I are prepared to offer you a comprehensive sponsorship package, 7 figures annually, plus equity in our new sporting goods division. That's very generous, Sarah replied. It's business, Reeves corrected. What you did today isn't just sport. It's a demonstration of human potential that aligns perfectly with our corporate philosophy. We push boundaries just like you do. Sarah glanced across the room to where her father was engaged in animated conversation with several guests who had recognized his name from archery's golden era. For the first time in years, he looked truly alive, sharing stories and technical insights with genuine enthusiasm. I'll consider your offer, she told Reeves. But I have conditions. Name them. First, any arrangement includes funding for MS research through the foundation of my choice. Second, I maintain complete control over my competition schedule and training methods. Third, I want to establish an archery scholarship program for underprivileged youth. Reeves studied her for a moment before smiling. You're as strategic as you are talented. We can work with those terms. 6 months later, Sarah stood at the entrance to the newly established Thompson Archery Center. The state-of-the-art facility had been built with funding from her sponsorship deal, located in an underserved area of the city to maximize accessibility for youth programs. Her father, whose new treatment protocol had slowed the progression of his condition considerably, cut the ribbon from his wheelchair. Behind them stood Connor Reeves and his fellow executives, who had discovered that Sarah's story and continued dominance in competition had indeed been excellent for business. Inside, the walls displayed both traditional and modern archery equipment, with a special section dedicated to the history of the Thompson family's archery legacy. Classes were already fully booked for months in advance, with a substantial percentage of spots reserved for scholarship students who would otherwise never have access to the sport. As donors and community members toured the facility, Sarah slipped away to the private range at the back. There, a simple target was set up amid natural elements that echoed Whispering Pines, real trees, natural lighting, the sound of wind and water from carefully designed features. She took out her father's bow, still her preferred equipment despite the custom pieces she now had access to, and nocked a single arrow. As she drew back the string, she reflected on the journey of the past year. From desperate daughter with fading hope to champion. From financial insecurity to abundance. From invisibility to influence. The arrow flew true, striking the absolute center of the target. Not for sponsors or spectators or social media, but for the pure joy of the perfect shot. The feeling that had started everything and sustained her through the darkest times. As Sarah lowered her bow, she felt her father's presence behind her. "Still hitting the mark," he said proudly. "You taught me well," she replied, helping him position his wheelchair next to her. "No," he corrected gently. "I taught you technique. You found your own way to the target." Together they looked out at the range, at the future they had built from desperation and determination, from humiliation transformed into triumph, from arrows that flew true against all odds.